May the 5th.
There is a presence here.
Yes, undoubtedly, wherever St. Therese's relics are, she's present in a very special way. And the person that recognised that most was the late Holy Father, the servant of God, John Paul II. He insisted that for any major St. Therese ceremony, that the relics would be present. And when he proclaimed her a doctor of the Church in 1997, he insisted that the relics be brought from Lisieux, and they were there on St. Peter's Square for the 1.5 million people who witnessed that beautiful ceremony.
Can you describe what we have here?
Well, we have here now, it's called the Canonization Statue Reliquary. It was the reliquary that was venerated during the canonization ceremony in St. Peter's in Rome on the 17th of May 1925. Now, this reliquary was directly beside the Pope, and I'll tell you very quickly a beautiful story. Pius XI, of course, who spoke of Therese as my guiding star, he both beatified and canonized her. Well, at the moment of canonization, when he pronounced the formal words of canonization, a big garland of roses that had been attached to the roof over the high altar in St. Peter's Square fell down at his feet. And he hadn't the slightest doubt that it was St. Therese giving her, in her own inimitable way, giving her approval to all that was going on. So this was the reliquary that was present there. And it has a very special significance, Donnaing, in this sense, that it was the skeleton of St. Therese was what was intact when she was exhumed. And the difficulty then facing the rector in Lisieux and the bishop of Lisieux was how to get a relic, a substantial relic, that wouldn't be too big and wouldn't cause a lot of problems. And so they were inspired to go to what they called the navicular bone of the foot. That's the bone that operates the foot. And there's a very special significance in this, that the feet of St. Therese were so much a part of her whole sanctified life. She ran to the service of others. She ran in the way of perfection, as the doctors of the Church often describe her whole way of sanctity. And particularly when she was dying and was out in the garden and was struggling along getting a little bit of fresh air, and her nursing sister pleaded with her to sit into the wheelchair, she said, "No, I'll walk a few more steps and offer it to God for some poor missionary who is totally discouraged, disappointed, frustrated, about to give up his work, or her work, as the case might have been." So really, that turned out to be prophetic, because a few years later, a missionary who read about this incident, when he had an opportunity to come back to Europe, he visited Lisieux and he queried anxiously about this statement of Therese walking the few steps. And he found out, after matching dates and times, that in actual fact it coincided exactly with a moment in his missionary effort when he was totally depressed, disheartened, and about to give up and return home. And he knew in a single instant that there was such a supernatural surge of energy and interest and vitality anew in his work. He knew it was a big supernatural experience, and he wondered how it had come about. He knew it was a gift from God, but he didn't know how he could have merited it in any way. And it was St. Therese. Now, that was one of the factors that helped to make her patroness of the missions later on, when Pius XI decided to make her co-patroness of the missions. All those little acts of service, hidden acts of love of neighbour. You remember the old Sister St. Peter, whom she carried along by the cincture along the cold cloisters of the Lisieux Carmel, struggling along the poor arthritic nun. These were the feet that struggled with that poor nun and got her from point A to point B. So there's a big significance in this navicular bone.
What drew you to her first?
Well, I think she drew me, to be perfectly frank. My earliest recollection is in the hallway between the hall door and our kitchen at home. When I was a small boy, my father or mother bought, it was shortly after the canonization of St. Therese, and of course they were selling these pictures of the new saint. And I was very small, of course, but I remembered it up on the wall, and I always felt she was looking down at me, and I wondered could I get away from her gaze. So I'd walk along the corridor, look back over my shoulder. She was still watching. Then I began to run up and down. Of course, my poor father thought I was mad, and I kept my little secret, but she was looking at me even then. So
she is still watching.
She's still watching, yes. Those marvellous eyes. She has the eyes of her mother, as you can see over there in the picture of Venerable Louis and Zélie. She's very much those soulful eyes like her mother. But many people have commented on those beautiful eyes.
That night when we were in Knock, a lovely man, a bishop from New York,
Bishop Patrick Ahern,
told us how she died and how she faced death.
That's right, yes. And a lovely story about that now that's relevant to Ireland. Cardinal Daly, as you know, a great devotee of St. Therese, he celebrated his 90th birthday in Lisieux, 1st of October last. And the orchestra and organ and massive choir that were present, as well as the 5,000 congregation, they sang happy birthday for Cardinal Daly in the Basilica. And nobody deserves it more, because he's a marvellous devotee of St. Therese.